Hi, it's Robin. In this video, I wanted to get into my interpretation of One Battle After Another, and how I know there's some controversy about how they depicted Black women. I wanted to talk about the idea of community, racial relationships, and whether or not I think it's worthy of Best Picture at the Oscars. So firstly, One Battle After Another is basically about this former revolutionary who has been in hiding for 16 years while raising his daughter. And after that 16 years, the antagonist Lockjaw is searching for him again, and things happen. It's like a little cat and mouse game. So although Leonardo, who plays Bob, at least that's the name I know him as, he plays Bob, although he is depicted as the main character in a lot of the trailers and of course like within the movie itself, he's not really the main character in my opinion. He's very, or at least he's a very passive protagonist. Throughout the entire film, he's being saved by other people. And I think that kind of goes into the title of the movie, One Battle After Another, which essentially I think means the battles that different people of color have to go through, and how they're kind of used to it, but then this main character who is played by a white man is not used to having to fight for his own rights. And of course that's a very oversimplification of it, but I think that's kind of generally what Paul Thomas Anderson was trying to get at, that these other characters are saving him, they're used to it, they're not reacting the same way, they're more competent than Leonardo's character. And so that's first seen with Benicio's character, Sergio. And I really like his character because it's a huge antithesis to Leonardo's character. So when we first see Sergio, or Sergio, I guess I'll just say Sergio, whatever. When you first see Sergio, he is very calm while Leonardo is freaking out the entire time. Leonardo is asking for his help. And Leonardo is basically fumbling while Sergio's staying really calm. And what I think is really interesting about his character is that a lot of the time he is speaking Spanish in the movie, but there's no subtitles. And I think that's a really interesting depiction of community, because it's kind of like you don't get a certain amount of characterization unless you know this language, which I think is like kind of meta. Like even in real life, sometimes there's only so much that translating can do. You don't really understand all of the person unless you can speak their language. And I can see that sometimes with Spanish, if I'm speaking Spanish, how much people might light up because they, you're connecting to them on a different level. And so I think I found that part really interesting, that there was no subtitles, so you couldn't see how he interacts with the other immigrants unless you knew Spanish. And even for myself, it was difficult because I don't know Spanish. I'm not fluent. But the parts that I did know, I was like, wow, his character is so captivating. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't know how he treated the other Spanish-speaking people in the movie. Oh, I also liked that during the scene while Bob was on the phone trying to figure out the password, Sergio is he's drinking beer, he's calm, he's just like acting like nothing's happening. While while Bob is just trying to quickly find a charger. And again, that really shows that hey, this is nothing new for us. We've been doing this whole time. You've been complacent for the past 16 years, and you're struggling because you've been complacent while we haven't had the luxury of being complacent. I found that really interesting. And then that kind of goes into the depiction of the Black women in the movie, which I know was really controversial, but I tried giving a very faithful interpretation, a good charitable interpretation of the Black woman in the movie. So I think the first thing, of course, is the depiction of like the angry Black woman, the aggressive Black woman, and that was kind of bothering me at the beginning. And then also the hypersexuality of the Black woman. It's like, oh my gosh, okay, yay, we're fetishizing Black women again. However, I think that was the entire point of why they depicted them that way, because when you see how they interact with Lockjaw, or how when you see Perfidia, how she interacts with Lockjaw, you kind of see that it's not just showing like, hey, Black women are hypersexual. It's more like this is a survival method. And I think the fact that Leo's character is so passive, it shows that the women in his life have to be aggressive, because that's the only way they're going to get stuff done. They have to be angry and mean, and it's not necessarily saying like, hey, all Black women are like this, but I think it shows like, hey, the ones that are like this stereotype, it's not something to look down on, it's a survival skill. And yeah, I think the fact that Perfidia, she kind of has to perform that way and be hypersexual for Lockjaw in order to get things done, she kind of goes with that with Bob's character too. And so it's not like, hey, all Black women are hypersexual, but it's more like this is kind of the survival strategy that she has known. What else? And I think it also goes into, it's a commentary on the fetishization of women, because of course Lockjaw throughout the whole movie, he fetishizes Black women. He's looking at their, you know, their butts. He's he's saying weird things about how he loves Black women to Leo's character in the store, but that's all it goes. There's no humanization of the Black woman. It's only fetishization. So as soon as it's no longer a benefit to him to have sexual relationships with these women, he throws them away like they're trash. So like that goes into Lockjaw's character, which I find really interesting, is that the fetishization of Black women has been, you know, is pervasive. We know that, you know, during slavery, people, you know, they were assaulted. Trying to be careful with my words here, but I think some things, though, there was points where I was like, okay, I don't know if I like the stage name Jungle, and, you know, Jungle Cat as that woman's stage name. I know that's her stage name in real life, but that was a little bit icky to me. But again, I know that it was because it was depicting the fetishization of Black women. But again, I know just the term jungle fever referring to us as monkeys, probably not the best, but I do see what he was trying to do by showing that relationship between Perfidia and Lockjaw, and how that relationship was purely sexual and not based off of him actually seeing her as a human. Because again, Lockjaw, once he has a different goal, right? His goal is to be superior. Therefore, his relationship with Black women no longer matter to him. And that kind of shows the disposableness of Black sexuality, is that there's only a certain level of humanity that they are giving these Black women. And of course, that also shows up in the fact that Lockjaw doesn't even care about his own daughter. Despite Willa being his biological daughter, he doesn't care, because it's putting him in the way of getting to his goal of being, you know, a superior part of the, I forgot what they're called, but like the Christmas guys, the Christmas gang, the Christmas crew, the Santa Claus men, I don't know, but it's as soon as his own daughter gets in that way of superiority, he no longer wants her. He wants to literally kill her. And I also think that's fascinating, because I like their interaction, because Willa is very strong-willed and very, you know, she does have that stereotypical, oh, I'm aggressive, I'm mean. But it's interesting because Lockjaw, they insinuate that he has to go through some type of humiliation ritual in order to get into this elite white-only gang, and he's fine with being humiliated by other white men, to the extent of even almost dying, literally being shot in the face, and he still is fine being, you know, submitting to these white men. But then as soon as Willa, who was literally being kidnapped by him, shows disrespect, he does not stand for it. So it's kind of like, I think that's an interesting dynamic, and it also kind of reflects on, I guess, certain type of white people that will step on themselves in order to make sure that, you know, other people, other races don't get benefits either. So even though, you know, I might be the one primarily using food stamps, as long as other people don't get the food stamps, that's what I care about. So I think that's really, I think Lockjaw's character is very interesting, showing the dynamic between, you know, sexualizing Black women, but also only to a certain extent, and also being submissive to white men, but refusing to be submissive to women. Yeah, that's really interesting. Sorry, I'm looking over because there's notes here. I'm trying to make sure that I have everything. That reminds me. So, Willa, I like that it's a cat and mouse game, but not only with, you know, Leonardo is one step behind Lockjaw, but Leonardo's character Bob is always one step behind Willa, showing how it's not, she has to survive. Like, she can't rely on this, her white father. She has to rely on herself, which is why it goes back to why the women, the other Black women in the movie, are represented as more aggressive, more hypersexual, because they have to rely on themselves. Because as you can see, Willa could not rely on her father. Even at the end, she had to, she was the one that saved herself. And of course she found comfort in her father at the end, but the scene where she is still, the scene where she even has trouble becoming, what's the word, not weak, but letting her guard down on her own father at the end, really put that nail in the coffin for me, that this is about how she has to be stronger, because otherwise stuff wouldn't get done. And so even with her own father, she sees him, she can't let her guard down. She can't be soft and, you know, rely on other people. She has to be strong-willed, strong-minded, because otherwise she would have died much earlier in the film. But in the same sense, Leonardo does help her, because he's the one that taught her everything, how to shoot, took her to classes, which I think kind of ties into the fact of community. It's not really necessarily painting Leo as a villain. It is showing that he's incompetent, that he's complacent, but it is the community that ultimately saves his daughter. And I think that's the point, that you can't do it alone, that you have to other people. Again, with the sense of aggression, I think when it comes to that aggressive Black woman trope, it shows they have the negative side of that too, of Perfetti literally killing an innocent man and just doing his job. They show that the extremes of it, like, hey, if you force someone into this position where they have to kind of lose their humanity in order to survive, they will get to a point where they break some type of, it's kind of like Hamilton, where that same I related to Hamilton after, where, spoiler if you haven't seen the Hamilton musical, Hamilton, the same passion that drives him to, you know, help win the Revolutionary War, is also the same one that makes him fall, which causes him to cheat, to lose his relationship, to ultimately die at the end. So I think that's kind of a similar backstory, or not similar backstory, a similar theme in this movie, that aggression, the thing that saved her, is also the thing that kind of was her downfall as well. I also forgot to mention the part that Leo is passive in the sense of being a father too. He doesn't really care. He smokes weed around his daughter. His daughter has to be the one, Willa has to be the one to kind of be the responsible person, which again, you know, ties back into, in order to survive, she has to be strong-willed. Like, it's not really a choice. And then lastly, I think one big thing that confused me coming out of it was I didn't really know what the message was. Like, we see that Leo is passive, but he doesn't change as a character. At the end, he's still kind of on the couch while his daughter is out doing the protesting. I don't know if that just means like, hey, pass the baton on. If the movie was just about, you know, complacency of people that don't really need to worry about their rights being taken away, he didn't, you know, change as a character and then care about his rights being taken away. He just kind of, again, outsourced that to his daughter. So I still don't know what to take away from this movie. I think overall it was good. It was interesting. I liked the grittiness, the groundedness, even though it was also very absurd. But yeah, I think if someone could explain what they think the overall message is, because I'm kind of missing that part. But yeah, I guess that's it. I hope you guys have a wonderful new year. Let me know if I said anything that you don't agree with. I'm open to talking about it in the comments. And yeah, all right, everyone, bye.